Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Ryan Darcy, and today I'm about to go watch It Chapter 2. Surprise, surprise, I'm not saving it for my horror marathon I do every year. Heads up, I'll at very least probably spoil the original It, if not the newer It, so take that as a warning, I guess. If you haven't seen it, I mean, if you saw the first one, I assume you're gonna see the second one anyways, unless you hate the first one so much that you don't want to go see it. But why did you go see it in the first place? Every year, I usually have 31 days, 31 horror movies I've never seen before, and the last three out of the five, or no, the last two out of the that 4 years I did previous, I actually recorded because I started doing my just watched reviews. So, and was it the first? Yeah, it was the third year. I decided to end it off with It, the original, and then because there was one film where a disc didn't work, I had to actually make up that film, and I was like, hey, I'll go see the newer It right after. So that's my first time watching it. If you want to check out that before and after review, go check out that video. It's somewhere on my channel. Going into it, so this is It Chapter 2, and I'm pretty excited. I didn't see any of the trailers except for there was a clip of they showed one kind of trailer where it was more like a scene, and it showed the scene where I I'm not that great with names and all that, but I do know I'm probably going to refer to the characters by their actors. So Jessica Chastain is playing the girl. How much I remember of but anyways, and it's the scene where she goes to visit her old house, and there's an old lady there, and well, if you've seen the original, you already knew where that scene was going. It just the thing is about the It remake is like the first part. It had a lot of stuff where it was like, if you've seen the original It, they did it in such a newer way that it was still pleasing. It was still very, they adapted it in such a way that I would consider it a really well done remake. If I remember, that's how my reaction was. And I haven't seen the movie since I saw it in theaters, the first part. So I'm going into this actually after just off of memory. So it's as close as I'm gonna get to waiting 27 years and then seeing this. Actually, that would be really cool if I don't see It Chapter 2 until 27 years later. That would be such a weird experience, waiting 27 years to watch part 2 of It, just so you're grown up as if them. Yeah, that would be neat, but I'm not gonna do that. 2 years was enough. I want to see how this goes. um uh, yeah, so I only saw that little trailer where it showed a clip, and then I think there had a little bit of an ending teaser thing where it was like a bunch of clips from the movie a bit, but I can't remember that. I just remembered they showed one sort of scene a bit just as a teaser, which I applaud. I love it when trailers and that they already know if you are familiar with this movie, you're gonna go see it. Here's just a little clip from it early on, and apparently there's a lot of apparently the things I heard is like from the directors before the movie was released, they were trying to make it the bloodiest horror film of all time. They were like they wanted to have, Guinness World Record for most blood used in a film, stuff like that. I don't know if they accomplished any of that. And is it CGI? Is it practical? That's what I want to know. The first part was such a, I think, well done mix of practical and CGI, like just enough CGI and just enough practical that it worked. And so I'm quite excited there, because I'm just thinking of all the horror films I've ever seen, which at this point is actually starting to be a lot, just because I do the 31 horror films every year now. I can't really say I'm not a fan of horror anymore. I must be some sort of fan. I buy all these horror movies. I see all these horror movies. So I guess I'm a little more familiar with horror. But I'm just thinking, it's like all the films that had really, like, what was the bloodiest film I've ever seen? And I'm like, I remember moments from like The Shining, the elevator scene. I remember Nightmare on Elm Street, the bed scene, the second first bed scene and the second one. I was referring to one, but then I remembered there was also another one that was a bit bloody, and it's like Evil Dead had a couple really bloody moments that were just kind of funny because there's like the pipe and all that. But anyways, so I was just thinking, it's like I remember those moments, they were iconic and all that, but I don't think of a movie where it's like really bloody from beginning to end. I can't think of, like, even I just saw recently a little bit of teaser for my whole horror marathon. I watched for the first time Cannibal Holocaust, and that had lots of blood and gore and a couple scenes that made me sick, but it overall just wasn't bloody, like excess blood type movie. And then I remembered the Evil Dead remake. The whole ending climax was, it was raining blood. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. And I'm like, okay, I guess in a sense that's the bloodiest movie I've ever seen, is the Evil Dead remake, which I think is unusual thinking back to it. So it's like, if this movie has all out blood from beginning to end, and it's like a 2.5 3-hour film. I heard that they're going to do a director's cut and extended cut, and it's going to be like, they had like a 4-hour cut of the movie or something like that for part 2. And I also heard they're going to do extended cut of the first one, so I'm holding out for that. But if the second part is just all out blood as much as they can do from beginning to end, it might get, like, in the beginning, if you start off strong, it'll be like, wow, that's shocking, wow, that's amazing. And then it's like halfway through the film, I assume, like, if it was nonstop, you would probably get bored of it. You'd probably get desensitized to it. You would probably be like, this is not as shocking. You already outdid yourself. Like, you already did your, you already climaxed with blood. I mean, you can't get higher than what you did previous. And so I just wonder, or maybe they were saying that maybe the directors and writers were saying that just to just to play with the audience, because I'm going into expecting blood and all that, and then it's like maybe something else shocking will happen. I don't know. Wouldn't it be really funny if you go for part 2 thinking it's gonna end, and then the twist is end credit scene. There's gonna be a part 3, and it's gonna be 2 years. Well, they're gonna film it 2 years afterwards, but it's gonna be them 27 years even older again. Yeah, so the original I really enjoyed, and I can definitely see why it's such an iconic sort of horror like event that the original It movie was. But the ending of part 2 of that miniseries was a little, I mean, I consider it the original as a movie, even though it is 2 parts miniseries technically. But it's just the spider, it was like, it's so terrifying with this clown throughout the whole thing, and then it's like when it's revealed entity wise as sort of like a creature spider thing, it's like, it's not as scary. I mean, the effects TV budget that they had for the thing didn't exactly help. So with this movie, which I know after they did the first one, they hadn't started doing the second one until after the first one was released. So when the first one did so well and made so much money of the newer It, I assume they were like, okay, we have unlimited freedom with the second movie now. We can just go all out on the budget. We can do all the stuff that, because we're so successful. The first part was so successful. We could just, go all out for the second one. So it's like, how are they going to do it? Is it still going to be a spider? Did Stephen King give permission to change something? Or maybe they went in their own direction with it. I don't know. Like, there's so many things I want to know. Are they going to change things? Is certain things that are supposed to happen won't happen? Like, I know one of the kids, if I remember correctly, committed suicide when he realizes that he's gonna have to return for to fulfill the pat, and go back to Derry to face Pennywise, and so he kills himself in the beginning of the miniseries of part 2. And so it's like the actor playing him, it's like, granted, this is going to be 2 hours and a half, 3 hour movie, so maybe it's going to be a bit while before that happens, but it's like, how similar are things going to be? Is certain events supposed to stay the same just because the original novel is, I mean, I never read the original novel. I have heard a lot of things, weird things, especially involving a turtle, and stuff, which I think they referenced in the first one with the little Lego turtle and all that. Anyways, time to watch It Chapter 2. Luckily I wore the brown pants today, just in case I shit myself, you know. I just hope, because the first one was really creative with what they did with some of the jump scares, some of the most of the moments and all that. So I do have high hopes for the second part. Let's see if it fulfills it. I just watched It Chapter 2, and I thought it was good. Once again, the first part, I don't know if this is better than the first part, and I don't know if it's, I'm going to assume the problem is, the first part, up to this point, you've only had the 1990s It in your head, and maybe the book if you read it. So when you watch the first part of the It remake, it's like you haven't seen this version of the tale. You haven't seen, it's so newer, and it takes place in the 80s, and instead of, what was it, 60s or 50s, I think, in the 90s version of it. So it's like, that's their first time experiencing something like that. So the second part, you already know kind of what you're getting into, but at the same time you don't. And the only reason this movie I don't think is going to do as well, because it's basically, it's just meant to complete the story. It's first part, it's like, it felt it was a little more of a tighter film. I don't know. I haven't rewatched it, but I will say It Chapter 2, it was still good. I still enjoyed it, and they did this the ending climactic battle, I felt, was done absolutely as well as it can possibly go script-wise. It's the kind of thing where it's like, if you have to do it, this remake has probably what will be defined as the best version of it ever. If they ever remake it in another 27 or so years, I think the ending battle thing won't be done as well as this. And what this movie also, Chapter 2, reminded me of, just because you see the overlap between this and the TV version, and it makes you appreciate the TV version even better, in the sense that you're surprised what they did, what they ended up trying to do, how they accomplished it, especially with the lower budget, because, I mean, TV movie budget is definitely a lot less than anything that was in theaters around, was it 1990s, if I remember correctly. So anything that overlapped wise, like, for example, the scene with the doors, I'm pretty sure that was in the 1990s version, but I kind of miss, like, there's scenes in the 1990s TV show where it's like I kind of missed, in the sense that, like, just the way they did it or attempted to do it, and Tim Curry, like, there's a lot of things that the remake doesn't push aside what was done previous. It just improved on a lot of things that the TV version budget couldn't really do or anything. and as well, and but there are still a lot of certain things that the original, you know, well, made iconic and stuff. um I will say, like, in this chapter 2, what bothered me was that uh there was reference. I thought it was a more subtle reference, was The Shining, but then later on in the film they made another Shining reference, The Shining. And the funny thing is, the first, I'm like, it's kind of annoying because the room with the old naked lady chasing after Jessica Chastain, and you got this, I'm pretty sure, like, my memory might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that's the exact same color type wall, and the little arch where the kitchen is, that's a little bit of an like, maybe not the arch specifically, but that color of that room has to be a reference to The Shining. The Shining line with the door, that is definitely a Shining reference. And what I also found was interesting is that there was one scene um, where they're under the pharmacy. I'm gonna say Eddie. I'm not sure. I might have got his name mixed up with someone else. But the pharmacy scene in the basement was very ominous to the Evil Dead franchise. Particularly, I'm gonna say Evil Dead 2, especially with the comedic music of when he's strangling the infected person, and the infected person just all of a sudden goes all over his face. Even though the comedic use of the music was a little too on the nose, it reminded me entirely of Evil Dead. Um, so I felt that was a reference. And then there was a scene in the house just before they went into the caves of the well, with the head where, it like changes, and then it, like, there's stuff that comes out of it is literally, I was thinking the whole time it was happening, I'm like, this is the Thing, basically. And so that's the one thing that sort of bugged me, is that basically, as original the whole premise of it is, I can see that the filmmakers for this, especially this remake, definitely was so influenced by the other movies that are really iconic in history of horror movies. Um, they couldn't let it go and try to do something a little more original. But there was still originality. It just, to me, it's either, it just, I don't know, I felt like it was just a little too, it reminded me of other movies, and which is okay. I don't know, I felt it was a little too on nose reference wise, but the spider scene was definitely done a lot better. The only thing, my only complaint about this movie, I would say, that I have to say, is that the beginning, I felt like it could have jumped into it a little bit better. It should have just started with the scene at the carnival. It shouldn't have opened up with narration, and if it was gonna open with the narration, it shouldn't start off with the flashback of showing basically a bit from the ending of the It Chapter 1. If you wanted to make it feel like not a sequel, which, if I remember correctly, before the showing of the movie, they were showing behind the scenes footage of It, and there's sort of the interview with the director and all that, and he's like, it's not a sequel, it's just a continuation of the story and all that. And it's like, when you open up your movie with flashback, narration, and timestamps, which were unnecessary, especially with later on in the film, the amount of transitions between old and new. You did not need to have any dates or anything, because there's enough script in this movie mentioning the 27 years and what decade was referenced in the first movie. Like, at the very least, all you need was maybe a title at the very beginning of the movie saying it's 1980s, 9, I think, or 1990. I'm not sure exactly the specific date. Maybe it was 87. somewhere around there. I'm not entirely sure. I would have to relook it up, but I just felt like I kind of wish they did something different for the chapter 2 ending. That's why I'm really hoping they're going to come out with the extended cut for number 1 and extended cut for number 2 like they said they were going to do, and they still say they're going to do, but I'll believe it when I see it. And I kind of hope they eventually release a full version of the film where it's number 1 and number 2 together in one Godfather edit, long edit, like, because that's was kind of my complaint of the movie, is I kind of wish I kind of wish I resaw the first half of the movie before seeing this. But I still remembered sort of the style and how they accomplished the first movie and all that, and then so it did feel like a good continuation. Some things I would have done differently, but overall, it chapter 2 I thought was definitely good enough, and it had enough creativity, though I felt like in this one it kind of bugged me that it started like some of the stuff was, it was basically each time was somebody chasing somebody, and usually giant or something like that, or some sort of size difference to it and all that, and it's like, but then I remember, but then it made it felt more realistic when you start seeing patterns of the way Pennywise and the entity or whatever works, because it's like, it reminded me sort of like a video game thing where it's like, if you're up against a boss and you've never been up against this video game boss before, you don't know what to expect, and usually you'll die a couple times trying to defeat that boss. Like, you fail a bunch of times. So the more you see of it, the more you see what it does, the more you can see opportunities of weakness and stuff like that. And that's what I realized is my complaints about it being similar, like the giant statue chasing and a couple other, the old lady who goes a little bit bigger size wise as is chasing Jessica Chastain for the apartment. Like, it seemed similar, but, and I would have complained, oh, it should have been something more random, something more random. But it's a bad criticism, because it's like, it makes more sense the way it was done in this, because it felt more real. It felt like more like it's a spider with hunting patterns, and it's, even though I think it's a little more alien, crash down the earth meteor. I'm pretty sure that was touched upon in the backstory, but like it it works. This remake works, and I think this is, in the terms of horror, I was complaining about references of other films, but it itself is a story that it's just as iconic as, say, The Shining, the first adaptation of it, and trying to think of another iconic horror film, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. Like, the first Halloween movie. Like, it's you can see, like, there's enough about it that it is iconic, and so it itself is a reference to itself, almost. I felt a little, the meta-ness of Bill being a writer and working on a movie set, and everyone hating the ending. I felt that was a little too on the nose and repeated a little too much, but I was fine with it. Minor complaints. Stephen King had a great cameo, recognized him right away, even from a distance, and I really hope they release some sort of really big one complete extended cut of both movies all together, one showing, maybe an intermission. That would be cool. I don't know if they would do that, but I really like the trailer that they showed before the movie, the one that is kind of related. I don't want to spoil it, but it I I miss surprises like that in the movie. So I'm glad Warner Brothers has decided to not show certain trailers on and release them on the internet, and you only be able to see them in theaters. If you go to the theaters a lot, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you see it chapter 2. Anyways, I did see it in IMAX. Forgot to mention it was fine. No, I don't think it changed at all IMAX ratio or anything. Um, but I did notice the sound once again. I think this might have been a complaint in my first review of the video or not. I kind of remember during the viewing of the second one that I remember them being too hamstring on the music for the horror and the stressful of the situation, where this movie, a lot of the moments could have been even more terrifying if it was just sound effects or like just the sound general ambience of the thing without overdoing it on the music of the score. So anyways, oh, and Bill Skarsgård just friggin' owns the role as Pennywise once again. And if there's one scene from this movie, the It remake of chapter 2, that will stick out forever, I felt I would have to say it's the bleacher scene. I would have to rewatch the original, but I don't think there was a scene like that with the little girl. But then again, I can't remember. So I felt like if what I saw, if I can't remember if they did something similar like that on the TV show or not, but I felt that was the way it was done, way it was shot, way it was edited. It just felt that it felt like a really standout moment of the remake. I felt and a really big Bill Skarsgård acting moment, definitely. Um, but yeah, this movie, I'm disappointed. Not as bloody as they built it up to be, and that's the problem when you build stuff up. People don't like it when you build it up more than what it actually is. I mean, you're supposed to generate some hype, but if you build it too much, it backfires. So now it's like this movie. It's like it didn't live up to my expectations, but it was a complete ending. So that's the problem with movies. You get to the point where you become so picky of them. Anyways, I want to know what you thought of It Chapter 2. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. I want you to have a nice day or night or whatever time you watch this. Have a nice whatever. Check out my other stuff if you want. It's entirely up to you. Bye.